everyone. Thank you so much for sticking along. It's my pleasure to introduce the next panel. We will have Sai Ziggy from KlimaDAO, as well as Giuseppe Mascolo from UCO Network to talk about leveraging Web3 for sustainability. Please give them a warm welcome. So as we've discussed, throughout the whole morning, and as you'll read in our white paper, the planetary constraints are really urging us to move beyond just the economic value to include also the societal value and environmental value. It's really important to start considering not only the cost of production for a product, but also its full range of impact. And finally, we're able to account for the positive and negative externalities thanks to Web3. So before we dive into Web3 for sustainability and its full potential, why don't we go ahead and introduce yourselves as well as your projects. Do you want to go ahead, Giuseppe, and start?
Sure, I can start off here. So my name is Giuseppe Mascolo. I'm the Community Management Director at UCO Network. And in a simple term, to put what we do, we're providing a decentralized protocol for the mitigation of fraud in the used cooking oil market. So what does that mean? How can you find ways to add traceability, transparency, and trust in a market that is requiring that? So that's pretty much the simplest way to put it. What I tend to do with UCO Network is I am more on the community management side of things, so I like to focus on building relationships, collaboration with other communities, and just really kind of going out there and trying to educate people on what we're doing. I've worked with other projects in the past, mainly, again, community management, working with building those relationships, and that's what brought me here today. So really, I guess I'd say that's about it. You can kind of go on.
Thank you. What about you, Sai?
So I am Sai Ziggy. I lead product at KlimaDAO. At KlimaDAO, we are building the digital carbon market, and we believe that the digital carbon market is the version 2 of the carbon market. We believe that the digital carbon market needs to be open, it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be neutral. And so we are concerned every day with building the critical infrastructure for the digital carbon market. We launched about a little over a year and a half ago. Since then, we've seen over $4 billion traded in carbon credits on-chain. And we were able to build the largest single source of carbon credit liquidity, not just on-chain, but off-chain as well, since that time. Since we were able to build that liquidity, we've been concerned with building this critical infrastructure. And so what that means is, how do large organizations, all the way down to individuals, interact with the carbon market? How do you purchase carbon credits? How do you hold them in your wallet? And further, and the whole point of the carbon credit is, how do you retire the carbon credit and remove it from supply to claim that benefit of the carbon credit? And that's what we've been focused on, and we have a lot of exciting new things to come as well.
Thank you both for joining us. So in the presentation this morning for the white paper, we presented you a green map that we built in collaboration with BCG to evaluate the most pressing sustainability challenges across industry. We saw that these needs differ greatly from industry to an industry to another. And so I wanted to know, in each of your fields of work, which are the most pressing sustainability challenges that you're dealing with?
You can go first.
Okay, sure. So I think we do not have a sustainability problem ourselves. We actually worked with Polygon to offset their entire chain. I think ours is a challenge of how can we bring blockchain to the users in a way that they can actually use it. So for example, we recently announced a partnership with Provide Eco, where we're building a connector to SAP HANA to facilitate transactional offsetting, right? So this will enable any SAP HANA user to add this app essentially into their instance, and for each transaction, their footprint of that transaction is automatically calculated, and then it flows through our liquidity pools to purchase that carbon and retire it automatically. And so that's what I mean about bringing the blockchain to the user. How can we do this in a way that's transparent and lowers the barrier to entry?
And then I can speak on UCO Network. So with us, we're at this point mainly dealing with the used cooking oil market. And in that specific area, there are actually many issues that really need some type of solution, specifically with Web3. And some of the biggest that come with, trying to find out how can we, I guess, fix that. So what I'm trying to say is collection and transportation. That right there is a big issue, just transporting that oil, finding a sustainable way to do that. You don't want trucks going all over the place. If you can manage the routes and try to cut that down, that offers a huge reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, that itself is a big issue that we're dealing with. How can you reduce those greenhouse emissions? How can you, prove that you're actually making a difference? That's a big, it's a big deal. And another thing is also proper disposal. That's a very big issue with used cooking oil. If you're just throwing it down the drains, there's so many environmental impacts, just from clogging up the drains. You have to then hit somebody to remove that. You can have different types of pests and things that are then in the sewer system that also, build up in there. So not only that, it can then leak into the groundwater. And then you have health hazards with people. So those are just a few of the, I guess, bigger challenges that we face in that industry. But there's many more that can be, down the pipeline, but I'd say that's probably the biggest at this point.
And how does Web3 in general help you tackle these challenges?
So Web3 specifically, I would say that's going to bring trust, transparency, and traceability into this marketplace that desperately needs it. Without it, you have a non-standard method right now that people are trying to have these proofs of sustainability, but they're not really easily audited. It's not really as efficient. So when you have Web3, let's just say you wanted to have carbon credits, for example. You now have the means to get that data to then issue something like that. So Web3 specifically has just many different advantages that you don't have in traditional Web2 companies. So specifically, though, having decentralized nature there, that's going to allow other people to enter the marketplace that couldn't before. So we have big institutions, you have regular individuals, households, and it's actually a big, especially when it comes to used cooking oil, the individual households are a very, very big untapped portion of the market. I think according to some calculations, it could be over $2 billion worth of different types of used cooking oil that could go for biodiesel production. So having Web3 would actually just simplify and give a lot more access to where there is none currently.
Right. What about you, Sai? How do you think that Web3 helps you tackle these sustainability challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it's core to our strategy. Obviously, as was said, I mean, there's the transparent aspect, in numbers we trust, right? So again, as I mentioned that SAP example, it's the way in which we can keep customer data, the data itself, private, whereas making their environmental impact public as part of their compliance. And it's through the blockchain that enables this, right? It is the blockchain that is going ultimately allow corporations and users generally to feel comfortable in interacting in this way, which today we just see a lot of walled gardens, and the difficulty in that collaboration is present, of course. So of course the blockchain underpinned by, I mean, it's really cryptography that makes that possible, this type of collaboration. And as I said, we need to bring the blockchain to our customers, and that is how we do that, is through cryptography in the blockchain.
Right, so you talk about the role of blockchain, the involvement of individuals. What specifically from tokenization we can leverage to enhance sustainability action?
Yeah, so like in our business, the carbon credit itself, when it's tokenized, all of its origination information is there with it. Increasingly, as we see the sensor data on the ground and remote sensing, we will see this data packaged into the carbon credits. So today, if you were to retire a carbon credit, you will be presented with a retirement receipt. This is something that you can share. You're able to click all the way through to the project in which that carbon credit came from. In the future, you'll be able to go further and see all of the sensor data and readings that went into the formation of that carbon credit. So tokenization specifically acts as a great vehicle for tokenizing not just the carbon credit itself, but the references to all this data that makes up the carbon credit. And again, this is key to compliance.
What about you, Giuseppe? How is your project advancing the use of tokenization for sustainability action?
So just to add on a few things that was said here too, with the sensors, that's a big thing that we want to do with UCO Network. We want to have IoT sensors basically with the collection of the used cooking oil to gather more data that you currently don't get. So having all that data further allows you to take that, analyze it, tokenize it, and if you will, we spoke again about the carbon credits. That's something that we aim to do, is to allow the creation of those carbon credits so that they can either be traded on an open marketplace, just further proof of the sustainability actions that are being taken place. So that is a really big part of it. It's just interesting with the direction that everything's going nowadays, that what you can take with the tokenization of certain assets, you give more incentives out. So I think it is really important to have just these new avenues that you can then go down and potentially do new things that you weren't able to do before, if that makes sense.
Right. And we already saw a disruption, right, from linear to circular models. How do your projects advance that specific transition?
Yeah, so, humans are really good at the cost of production, right? Like, we know exactly how much it costs to take things out of the ground, package them into products, send it anywhere around the world. We're amazing at that. What we've been terrible at is the cost of the impact of that production. And so carbon itself isn't the perfect measure, but everything that we do contains and emits carbon. And so it's a very good proxy of that activity, and that's where we're starting, right? And what KlimaDAO has done is it's helped, through the building of this liquidity, is helped the market decide on what is the cost, right? What is the price of these various types of carbon credits? And the market is the human's best invention on collaboration globally, right, and a sustained collaboration globally. But we need a way to bring that cost of impact of production into the accounting of companies and into our lives, so that we can innovate not just on the production itself, but the impact of that production. And it's through that way that we believe that the market will bring these efficiencies to the world, and we'll see a more sustainable, more circular economy as a result.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Giuseppe? How do you contribute to circular models?
So I'd say with the UCO Network specifically, just having an open marketplace that allows more than the traditional players to participate is already giving that much bigger interconnected sphere that people can then go and interact. And since it's never actually been there before, I think that's what kind of helps, since you have that the ability to branch out now. And maybe you weren't able to see these things before. So specifically being able to connect from the smallest parts of the collection process all the way to the end biodiesel producer, if you're able to interact with that entire supply chain ecosystem, that just helps everything stay in a, not a closed feedback loop, but something that is self-sustaining. And you have people from different areas that are able to go through and authenticate the data, make sure that everything is happening in a secure, transparent manner that, again, wasn't really able to do in the current structure that we have right now.
So that seems pretty aligned with our ecosystem model that we're going for and the blockchain biosphere as a whole, correct?
Pretty much everything that was in like the white paper was very spot on with the same goals and the vision that we have, yeah.
Right. And as we're moving more and more towards circular models, we're including new actors, right, to close that supply chain. We're including consumers in a whole new way, institutions in a whole new way, to really accelerate that transition. So how are each of your projects enabling the integration of these individuals and society as a whole in this fight towards sustainability and not just upchain? Why don't you go ahead, Sai?
Yeah, so as I said, we've been building this functionality to make it super simple. We're building out these integrations with large corporations, but for people, these tools that we've built, any individual can use them. So probably our most notable personal user of KlimaDAO infrastructure is Mark Cuban. He offsets all of his personal air travel. He does it himself directly. He shares his retirement receipt on his socials because it is that easy to do. You can just simply go to our dApp. You can search for a project by its location, by its methodology, by its vintage year. You can see the real-time price of it, and you connect your wallet and you purchase with USDC or any various assets, and it's instant. And so I think when we look at how we build these tools, we have to realize that even though probably it's going to, in the near term, be corporations, small and medium businesses that are going to move the needle on this, the people within those organizations are just people too, and we need to make the experience easy for them to use and understand. And so this is something that we're always thinking about as we're building our tools.
I imagine that the love letter campaign that you've had has also contributed to that. Can you speak more on that?
Yeah, so we launched what we call the love letter campaign. It's a way basically for you to encode a message on the blockchain while offsetting a little bit of carbon. And so we saw, thousands of messages come in from everyone, like a mother offsetting the footprint of her family and writing a nice message to her children, to many of our partners. So we've probably offset the highest number of NFT and Web3 projects. As I said, we did Polygon, we did integration with SushiSwap and a bunch of NFT projects. And so some of them also use love letters to declare their commitment essentially to sustainability.
Giuseppe, in UCO Network, what is the role of the individual himself in propelling forward the vision of UCO?
I would say the role of the individual is paramount to what we at UCO Network want to do, because allowing the individual to participate in the marketplace that they currently were not able to do is just a big reason on why we want to have this. Because not only do you want to have the big institutional players, even governments, let's say, working on something like a waste management supply chain solution, you want to have the average consumer person be able to participate as well. Let's just say, for example, you cook a lot at home, and you have a deep fryer, okay? You like to make French fries, maybe you have some parties. You're just going to dump that oil out in the garbage, maybe dump it down the sink, which you're not supposed to, or potentially you could interact with our protocol, take that used cooking oil, and actually get paid to dispose of it in a sustainable way, getting some sort of an incentive. So I think really, doing that, it just helps open up the marketplace to more people. And again, like I said before, we estimate that households are roughly $2.5 billion untapped market in the used cooking oil economy. So being able to bring them in would be huge. But not only that, it's just having as many people as you can. We like to look at it as like this. We want to Uberize the global used cooking oil marketplace. If we can do that, I think we'd be pretty good and off to a good start.
And what has been the feedback then on the micro level on this project and the individual involvement specifically?
Especially in specific areas of the world, it's been something that they said, wow, I can't believe that we've never seen this before, how, this idea is so cool, and we're getting lots of, you guys talked about love letters, we're getting love letters in a different way of people asking us, is the protocol ready? Can we use it yet? We're desperately looking for, a solution. I have 10 tons of cooking oil, or I have, a certain amount, can I dispose of it with you? So we're people are very interested in that, and I think, again, with the transition of a lot of people being more environmentally conscious, I think it is on more people's minds these days too, and especially the individual.
Yeah. And what about on the enterprise level? What have their reactions been when we're talking about Web3 for sustainability, for example, in your specific project?
So for me, when it comes to the enterprise, they tend to not want to know so much about the inner workings so much, just that the product works and it can handle their workflow or just what they have in mind. So I think we spoke about this in some of the Vechain spaces before. We talk about like Web 2.5. The goal, at least for us, would be to have a protocol or an app that existing companies can use and they have no idea that they're using blockchain technology behind it. But when it comes to just their, I guess, basic ideas of what we're doing, they're desperately in need of a solution as well because they want to be able to participate, potentially with carbon credits and being able to incentivize and just further, they can just save a lot of money by, for example, if they want to have all their trucks routed in a smart and efficient manner, that right there can be a huge offset for carbon because they're not driving as much. And they can have specific pickup points that, let's say, restaurant X is halfway full, restaurant Y is completely full. Well, maybe you don't go to the restaurant that's not full yet, and you're only picking up, from the places that are actually full. And that, again, that's allowed by blockchain, Internet of Things, and having access to all that information together. But yeah, enterprises, they really want something like that. So.
Yeah. And I guess what's drawing them is that trust, authenticity, transparency that we keep coming back to, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And Sai, so how are we making sure that the emission reduction that we're having is real, is measurable, tangible, and transparent?
Yeah, so it's all about how, in our business, how carbon credits originate, how they're verified. And I think, look, no product improves without contact with the market. And the transparency that we bring to the carbon market has certainly been involved in starting that conversation of these assets, the validity of these assets, where do they originate, and it's for the better because, as I said, products need the market to help them improve. And carbon credits themselves are improving. Now, when it comes to the origination of how these credits were created, today, as I said, we link to the specific project. And when you look at the project, you can see many PDFs that were generated from third-party auditors of certifying this specific project, whatever it may be. In the future, we will see that data increasingly come on chain. So right now, you can think of it as locked away in PDFs. But in the near future, this will be live data on the chain and captured.
Mm-hmm. And for UCO Network, I mean, we talk so much about transparency. It's clearly at the heart of your project. Can you talk more about how it's the driving force behind your next steps?
Yeah, trust, transparency, traceability is like the ethos of what we do. That right there is the forefront. If you have that, we're satisfied that we're taking care of our vision and we're doing what we set out to. So, that starts again with blockchain and Web3 specifically because it just allows so many avenues to open up and have all the data at your fingertips, live in real time, and be able to access that. And we've just never been at a point before where you can take all that data and then do something with it. So that's why I think, having that now and just being here, everything, with the white paper that you guys have brought up too, it just seems like, these issues are starting to merge together, and a lot of people are seeing that, it is a big issue that if you don't have trust, transparency, and traceability, like how can you be sure of anything that you're doing is having an impact, big, small, or good or bad, And again, with blockchain, if you have that proof, then you know for sure that somebody isn't going in and messing with the data or doing something that would, cause harm to the information and the sustainability that you want to practice. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much it.
And granting collaboration.
Yeah, in numbers we trust. That's really it. Yeah. And we like to say too. So when we have our systems in place, we like to call what we use in NFT as basically the most boring NFT, because what we're using that NFT is really just a digital certificate to have that proof and assurance that what you're doing in our network is, again, sustainable, and then you can have that like as a receipt for yourself.
And outside of building on more energy-efficient chains, what should Web3 organizations be doing to achieve decarbonization?
Figure out where the transactions are in your product or service. Figure that out, and figure out how you can connect that to some offsetting activity. Of course, you need to be reducing, right? You need to be becoming more efficient in how you produce your product or services. But figure out where those transactions are happening, and how best to connect them to offsetting activity like a direct connection to the carbon market. As I said, we're working on this very same thing. And it's our belief that, as I said, that we need to bring the blockchain to where this activity is happening, that everything is clearing on the blockchain behind the scenes, but our users don't necessarily need to worry about that. But generally, I think that's the trend we're seeing, that this is a question primarily of future liability for corporations. Right? We're moving into a world with remote sensing, with satellites that are taking, on average, 2 images per day anywhere on the world, IoT sensors, intelligence at the edge. I'll tell you the thing that's interesting about remote sensing is these models, they're in academia right now, and over the next few years, you'll start to see these machine learning models become increasingly accepted. But the interesting thing is they're built on the satellite data that can go back 8 to 10 years. So you'll see a retroactive analysis of every factory, of every cruise ship, of every plant on a waterway or on land. And there is a question of liability, of future liability. And many corporations are doing this calculation right now. And I think the answer to that calculation is coming out is that this liability could be significant, and so it's important to get ahead of this now. And so that's why I say look at where the transactions are in your business, and work with providers like KlimaDAO on how you can connect the footprint of those calculations to a solid offset as part of your reduction strategy as well.
And Giuseppe, what do you think are possible solutions toward decarbonization in that same vein?
Yeah, I would say, just to kind of touch on what you were saying, that these companies can conduct their own carbon footprint analysis and really do like an internal audit and see where they're lacking compared to other companies, projects, other metrics out there, and just see where they stack up. And at that point too, almost, especially if you're in Web3, I feel like collaboration should be one of the biggest things that comes up. There should be more collaboration in these areas, that instead of everyone trying to section off and maybe do it themselves, we should be coming together more to see if we can have that bigger impact. Because more minds together, you just have more people there that can give you better feedback. And I think advocating for change within the Web3 community is something, especially for these projects. If you have a big sphere of influence, why not use that to advocate for that change that maybe others will, follow and take suit. You're not trying to force people to do it, but if you show that you're doing the right thing because you feel it's the right thing and you're genuine, other people may, see that you're genuine in that sense and want to take the steps necessary to then do that. But of course, I think somehow incentives are going to be coming into play in the future to really kind of get everyone on the same page.
And you spoke about collaboration as a metric. How do you envision that a bit more tangibly?
Specifically, like with UCO Network and
in general, since we're using it as a metric for towards decarbonization, for example.
I would say that events like this, you're meeting lots of people that all kind of have the same vision and the same goal in mind, and taking that one step further and acting upon it is probably one of the best things, because we can all sit here and talk about all the great things that we want to do for the environment, but unless we're acting on it and we're actually doing something, then nothing's ever going to change. So it really, we have to take that first step of, while we're collaborating, work to further those relationships and actually do something. But so far, I mean, everything that I've seen with Vechain specifically, too, not to give you guys a nice little push, but
We'll take
you
it.
guys are really at the forefront of the sustainability and environmentally friendly practices, which I think other people should be modeling their ideas and plans after.
Right, and it's allowing this time, right, to provide frameworks for these collaborations and build them together.
Of course, and again, this is a great place. Like people say, not to read the white paper right now, but there was so much interesting information. I was trying to take that all in because it is good to have feedback and see what everyone else kind of thinks, because you can be working on this yourself, but until you kind of bring it out to the public, you don't really get that perception of what everyone else thinks about it as well.
Right. And looking ahead, are there any promising innovations at the intersection between Web3, blockchain, that you want to speak about and that you're looking forward to? Sai, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I've touched on it, but I think it is the movement towards quantifying the Earth with these sensors and remote sensing, and how that data is shared. I think it's enabling corporations to keep their private data private and their ESG or sustainability data public. And I think these things are going to come together because of the blockchain. And I think, as I said, we're going to move into a world where everyone can accurately account for their footprint and act accordingly. I think that what we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years is this conversation about carbon credits will be less a voluntary activity as it becomes a requirement and it becomes an essential part of the economy to account for the impact that we've had on it. And I think we'll really start to appreciate when that happens because it won't just be talk about action, it'll be actual action happening in a sustainable way, and it'll involve the market itself.
Giuseppe, any thoughts?
Yeah, specifically what you said about the sensors, that obviously is a big thing that we're trying to do, and I think the usage of those sensors in multiple ways, and not just what we're talking about too, that's really interesting because we're having discussions about what these sensors could do, and specifically with like UCO Network, we want it right now just for oil, but what if those sensors potentially could detect other types of waste or different impurities or just any other number of things that we want to go through. So I think that right there is interesting. Also, even just with NFTs, like I spoke before, a lot of people think of it as just a picture, but there are so many more applications that you can take. I still think it's evolving and changing every day in this space that it can be more than just that. There can be so much data that you can gather from that. And I think, again, like you said, 5 to 10 years also with carbon credits, it probably will be something that's a necessity. I feel like regulations are coming and pushing towards it, especially in Europe. I know they have lots of subsidies that are pushing towards greener and more sustainable energy practices. So already, if they're incentivizing people to do that, you can think that, again, in the future, it will be more of not a nice to do, it's, well, we have to do it. And if you have to do it, you might as well already have the protocols and everything in place to easily and accessibly do it. But yeah, carbon credits, that is really definitely an interesting thing and what you can do with it and how accurate you can get with it. If you can get extremely accurate with the information on what it is, I think then you can almost build up these reputations maybe for the people that are collecting, buying, and selling these carbon credits to have sort of a sustainability score, if you would, for yourself. So yeah.
Let's dream a little. I'd love to hear a little bit what your vision is a few years down the line, what your project looks like, how it has contributed to changing our daily lives.
Sure. So, I mean, by all popular accounts, the carbon market itself is growing and should grow many times its current size. I think the digital carbon market will enable that, scale to really drive climate finance. I think KlimaDAO, at our core, we have the Klima token, which is a carbon-backed cryptocurrency. I believe our ultimate success is when that this backed cryptocurrency is used itself as a medium of exchange, that it becomes this so-called like carbon coin, this coin that represents sustainability versus, say, the petrodollars we have today. But I think the way we get there is, again, by scaling the carbon market. And in order to do that, we need to build the infrastructure today to make that happen. And so I would say that our ultimate success is when the carbon market has a large impact on our global economy. And that's what I expect to see.
Giuseppe, what's the dream for UCO Network?
So it's 2030, let's say. A little bit time to let everything fully develop. I'd say in my vision, I see UCO Network as the #1 provider of disposing not only used cooking oil, but all different types of waste. So that could be anything, And having that, not only, again, just on the terms of helping the environment and being able to, accurately analyze all that data and then take that and push it to the necessary departments where people want to utilize it, but also the fact that once you have all that data, the possibilities really are endless. We look at it just of what we can do today, but you never know tomorrow what new technology or innovations that are going to come to it. But really, yeah, if we are able to, do the things that we are setting out to, it should be that we're able to get all the cooking oil, but also while having all these, big industries and big players, we also want the little person to be able to participate. Someone in a country, maybe let's say, where they have that extra cooking oil, and when they're disposing of it, they're actually getting paid in our token, UCOIL, and that then is incentivizing them to participate because they're getting something for doing the right thing. So by all these little metrics, I feel that can help the individual then kind of change the mindset of everybody, and that's really what we want to do. We want to have the most sustainable practices that we can, and obviously Vechain will be right up there with us. So that's where it is.
Thank you so much for sharing this vision and overall the optimism, right, and the positivity around this discourse. Sometimes it tends to be clouded a little bit with some guilt, especially at the individual level, compliance. And so it's really important to keep it in the positivity discourse, and Web3 enables just that by valuing the full range of impact of a product, a behavior. It enables us to collaborate in a whole new way, and so the sustainability challenges seem to be broken down, and sustainability is finally within reach, right? Thanks to Web3. So it's an exciting time. Thank you so much for your contribution. It was such a pleasure to hear about both your projects. Let's hear it up for Giuseppe and Sai. Thank you for your participation.